Tonight on Face the Nation, MP Iran Vikramaratne, SJB, Dr. Harini Amarasuriya, MP NPP, President's Council M.A. Sumandiran, MP TNA, Attorney Shiral Laktilaka, Senior Vice President, United Republic Front. Tonight on Face the Nation.
Why should we decide anything now? We don't even know who's contesting.
Good evening and welcome. This is Face the Nation. Corruption is a cancer that eats away a citizen's faith in democracy, diminishes the instinct for innovation and creativity. Good evening and welcome, and thank you very much for joining us on TV1. Joining us this evening on the show to discuss the topic, fight against corruption. We have with us in the studio Iran Vikramaratne, Member of Parliament representing the Samagya Jana Balawegaya, Attorney at Law Shiral Laktilaka, Senior Vice President, United Republic Front, Dr. Harini Amarasuriya, Member of Parliament of the National People's Power, as well as M.A. Sumandiran, President's Council, representing the Tamil National Alliance and also Member of Parliament. On to my immediate right is Nadeem Majid. On to my immediate left is Neeraj Shidethambi, who is the Consultant English News Director at News First. You also can join in as far as the conversation is concerned. You can WhatsApp your messages to 0766 565353. The number once again, 0766 565353. So let's get the ball rolling today with Iran Vikramaratne, Member of Parliament representing the Samagya Jana Balawegaya. What are your thoughts on the topic, fight against corruption?
Thank you for inviting us to be here. The fight against corruption, in my view, hasn't even begun. We all know that corruption is there at every level of Sri Lankan society. Just last week, I visited the German technical school, and I had a good discussion. And they're doing a really good job at the school. And then I was being taken around, and then I was reminded that this school had started in the 1950s when the German government gave assistance to the CTB, Ceylon Transport Board, in Veerahara. That's how it started. So automotive technology. So it was to repair the buses, if you want. So I turned and said, where are the buses now? This was set up for that. In 1970s, it moved to Ratmalana, Morutua, and there were no buses. So I said, you are training people, which is good, but then you need vehicles as well to demonstrate. And the person looked at me and said, no, but nowadays, they make private decisions. And what are the decisions? That they can decide to give any government vehicle to any private place and get it done. So I said, that's okay. If it is outside your scope to deal with it, then that's okay, because we need it done efficiently and quickly. And the person turned to me and said, no, they like to give it out because the person who makes a decision to give it out generally gets something in return. I was really taken aback, but in a way when I thought about it, because often the focus is the president robbing, is the cabinet robbing, are MPs robbing, are high officials robbing, and certainly there's a lot of corruption there, but it also showed that at every level it has seeped, that corruption has become a way of life. People think of it as normal, and people think that paying somebody to get something done very quickly, and even in a household it has seeped down. People come and say things like, I go to the municipality, I go to some other place, I need to get something done very quickly, and therefore it's a cost of getting it done quickly, and it's becoming normalized, and that's a danger. So it's really seeped at every level. So your question was, has the fight begun? I personally don't think the fight has really begun. We have done a few things. Right? Recently the government brought in an anti-corruption law, and I commend them for bringing the law. We in the opposition worked very hard, all parties in the opposition. We moved many amendments to it. They accepted the amendments, and the amendments were put in place. But then Sri Lanka's problem hasn't always been the lack of law. Sri Lanka's problem has been the implementation of law. So now we probably have a better anti-corruption law than the law we previously used to have. But the question is it really going to make a difference unless it is properly implemented? So there is certainly for sure, lack of political will in implementation. No question about that. Government after government, leader after leader has come and the situation hasn't improved. Lack of political will, for sure. Second thing is, corruption can't be fought just by the executive arm of government, because the executive arm of government is often responsible for the corruption. So, the public must stand up, institutions must stand up, professionals on those institutions must stand up, because the rule of law has to work. And we often find that the rule of law does not work. So that means the Attorney General's department, right, needs to be doing it. Certainly there are issues there and we can talk about it later, certain conflicts in which why they can't really go after corruption, right. Then in addition to that, the judiciary needs to stand up to it, right, because we need to have quick verdicts given. The delays don't really help, particularly in corruption. Politicians know that they can drag it out. And then of course the legal profession. I know we have all lawyers here today, and they might start finding fault with me, but being the non-legal person, I must say that the legal profession is also responsible. One reason is delays in the law, delays in implementation, and that's a huge problem, because when you have delays, people lose confidence in the system, and so that also needs to be corrected.
Iran, very quickly before I move to Shiral, if you look at it, last year the people wanted a system change, and one of the slogans that was cried out at the Aragale was "Bring back our stolen money, and then we can do something about it." But do you think that has happened so far with the Ranil Wickremesinghe administration coming into play a few months ago?
Nowhere near it. So for systems change, two important things in fighting corruption. One is you need an independent anti-corruption commission. Sri Lanka's anti-corruption commission hasn't been independent. You need an independent anti-corruption commission. This law, as I said, the basis is there for it now. It needs to be implemented. The second thing you need, if you're really going to fight it, is you need an independent public prosecutor. The AG's department, right, if you're in government, you're a minister, they advise you, right, and then you steal, the next day they have to basically move against you. It doesn't really happen. Then I think there's a conflict there, and therefore I would say you need an independent public prosecutor. In 1974, the people in Hong Kong came on the street, and they didn't go back till they got those two things done. An independent anti-bribery commission and independent public prosecutor. I think in Sri Lanka the time has come for us to have an independent public prosecutor. Governments can change, cases can't be withdrawn. They have to go on, let the judiciary decide. So these are, in the fight against corruption, I would say there are lots of structural things that need to be handled.
Thank you very much, Iran Wickremesinghe, Member of Parliament representing the SJB. I now move my attention towards Attorney at Law Shiral Lakhtilaka, Senior Vice President of the United Republic Front. What are your thoughts on our topic tonight?
No, first of all, thank you very much for having me here. And while endorsing what Iran has said, I should add one more to that, that Sri Lankan political class is also, we have to add to that, because the corruption has reached to an endemic level in Sri Lanka. It is not only a structural problem, it's a cultural problem also. Now, one time in late 90s, Professor Indraratna prepared a report and said the corruption level of Sri Lanka is 10% of the GDP. At that time, GDP was like 81 billion US dollars. So if it is the 10%, so it comes to 8%, 8 billion, right? So that is in 90s. But we have seen gradually this ratio, the percentage, how it has increased. And now if we look back after the declaration of bankruptcy, what we can see a clear connection for all our ills with the corruption. Now if you look at the balance sheet after the declaration of bankruptcy, we have, according to my analysis, that we have 4 liabilities. One is the debt. The second is corruption. Third is incompetency. And fourth is instability. But if you analyze it very carefully, corruption can be named as mother of all these liabilities. So that's why we are saying that the Sri Lankan crisis is not an economic crisis, it's a crisis of governance. The governance crisis, unfortunately, up to now, the Sri Lankan political class have never been able to analyze this crisis. So that's why if you look at the latest report of this IMF, the governance diagnostic assessment, they have very clearly understood the problem of Sri Lanka. That's why they have asked 16 steps to be taken if they want to resolve the Sri Lankan economic crisis. What are those 16 steps? Those are all connected with the governance issues. I know that once this report was discussed in Parliament, where Dr. Harsha De Silva was one by one, he was reading these steps. I didn't see that any of these, except Harini and I mean, with respect to their party, Sri Lankan political class have never been understood the real problem of Sri Lanka. That is the issue. So now you ask about the corruption, how to deal with the corruption. Look at this thing, this present government, this is connected with the political will. The political class sitting on the governance is not prepared to deal with the corruption. Corruption means corruption, waste and malpractices, all these three. Then, now you ask about the stolen asset recovery. Then the present Justice Minister has brought anti-corruption law. But he failed to bring or connect the anti-corruption law with Proceeds of Crimes Act. Proceeds of Crime Act was drafted somewhere in 2018, right? But still, the present government, the architects of that Proceeds of Crimes Act is Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe. But he has no political will to bring that. And also, one last thing, when he brought that Anti-Corruption Act, he could have easily connect that UN Convention Against Corruption, the two articles. If he have connected that with this thing, easily you can not, I'm not going to say we would be able to recover the stolen asset, but at least there is a legal regime. But right. Even that is not there. So therefore, ultimately what I have to say is, present political class has no political will to deal with right. The corruption in Sri Lanka.
Sriral, if you look at the last 15 years, if you look back at your political career, you've supported Ranil Wickremesinghe, then you supported Maithripala Sirisena, then you supported Sajith Premadas's candidature, and now you are supporting Partly Champika Ranawaka's candidature. How is your political party now different when it comes to fighting corruption?
No, I tell you, on anti-corruption law, we are very firm on that. Now, if you look at my history, we are the people who started the anti-corruption watch in 2010, when nobody was there to challenge Mr. Rajapaksa regime at that time. We are the people who went to courts, challenged him and named him as a corrupt leader. At that time, nobody was there to even think like that. Right?
2015.
No, wait a minute.
Was appointed as a president.
Our
you
policies
supported good governance at that time.
Wait a minute.
But nothing has happened.
Yeah, I know. I agree.
Then.
I agree. Now, I can give you one good example. So, 2018, we have set up Stolen Asset Task Force. Right?
No, but again,
under our government.
Yeah, but that boils down to the question that Iran spoke before. We have the laws, we have the teeth, but there is no implementation.
Yeah, so that is why I am saying in a different way.
Why is it how
It's
come-
about our political culture.
United Republic Front, how is it different from other political
No.
parties?
First of all,
Because
on-
Bharatiya Janata Party Lanka has also been in cabinet for many
we
years.
all were
All
part of various governments.
Do you,
there is no
do you
argument on that.
accept the fact that all the regimes that have been there, all the cabinet ministers who have been there, all of them are responsible for the dilemma that we are currently facing?
Definitely.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that, and I'll come back to you, Sridhar, momentarily.
Including us. All are responsible.
Probably everyone who has helped governments to come into power. But we will take a step back there and let you decide as to how things would move forward. Anyway, now I move towards Dr. Harini Amarasuriya, Member of Parliament representing the NPP. Harini, let me pose a direct question to you. How is your party different? Because if you look at the last few years, I remember when we speak about corruption, your leader had a press conference and spoke about the files that they have, but nothing concrete has happened, and it seems that your party is no different from other political parties as well. So how can the people have faith that the change that you all envisage as far as good governance is concerned, that you all can instill that in the country?
I think they will only realize that when we are in power, because as an opposition party and as representing the opposition, what we can do is bring these issues to public attention. And it's not just one press conference that we have held. I think we've held many press conferences and revealed many instances of corruption in the government, right? But and also made very serious attempts to get the law to act on those issues that have been raised. We've filed cases with the Bribery Commission. We've handed over evidence to the necessary authorities. We've raised it at every possible turn, but as Iran says, those in power do not implement any of the existing laws. So I don't think I don't think you can accuse us of not having done a bit. I think we have done a bit. We have done a lot in revealing many of the issues of corruption by the government, and also in creating that public discussion about corruption. I think as a party that has been something that we have worked very hard on, and our platform has been on a very strong anti-corruption front. But I want to pick up on something that Sridhar mentioned about the political class, and I think that's correct. This is not something. This is not a technical issue per se. This is an issue. This is a issue of our political culture. The existing political culture survives on corruption, is maintained and reproduced through corruption. Now, when we talk about corruption, we tend to think of it in terms of bribes and commissions, but that's not the only thing. That the entire political culture as it exists currently is based on a system of patronage, and it's based on a system of privilege. And that is that culture that maintains and reproduces corruption, right? So nothing happens, nothing moves without that culture being mobilized. So you want to change that, you have to change that political culture, starting with that system of privilege and that system of patronage that maintains that political class, and that's the very survival of that political class.
Dr. Harini, now if you look at the last few months, Iran spoke about the anti-corruption law that has been implemented in the country. Do you think the government is making progressive steps to combat corruption in the country?
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, the problem in our country is not the lack of laws, as Iran pointed out either. Even before we passed these bills, there were laws that could have been mobilized, that could have been used to prosecute many instances of corruption, right? But particularly for Ranil Wickremesinghe, who has no support outside his single seat in parliament and is dependent on the SLPP for his survival, how is he going to implement any of these laws or prosecute anyone? Half of the people that need to be prosecuted are sitting in his cabinet, and the minute he starts doing that, he loses power. So if he is to be in power, he has to live with that. I mean, and that's a conscious choice and a decision he has made. So all of these laws can exist, but it requires a political will and a willingness to confront that political culture that maintains this system. And certainly Ranil Wickremesinghe is not in a position to do it, because his whole existence as executive president depends on the support of a group of people, the majority of whom should be the ones who are being prosecuted under the very laws that they are enacting.
Thank you very much, Dr. Harini Amarasuriya, Member of Parliament of the NPP. Very quickly, Dr. Harini, there are some allegations against Anukumar Dissanayake as well when it comes to obtaining money, leading a luxurious life. We are not in any way saying that he should not lead a luxurious life, but there are allegations leveled at your party leader as well. How do you respond to those allegations that have been leveled by the people?
We would ask anyone who has those allegations now to please file a case. I mean, the government has the power to file any case against us, right?
Because they say, based on the numbers, JEP is one of the richest parties
that's
in Sri
because
Lanka.
we are the only party that actually submits proper accounts. No, I'm sure. I won't say we are the only party, but certainly we are the party that submits our annual accounts. We disclose our accounts. So you mean to say, if you look at the accounts that we've submitted, and you look at the expenditure incurred during an election, and you will notice the difference between what has been presented to the Election Commission and the amount spent by the respective parties.
We'll talk in depth about all this momentarily, Dr. Harini, I promise you. I'll give you an opportunity to elaborate yourself much more eloquently as we go along. I now move my attention towards a Member of Parliament and also President's Council representing the TNA, Mr. M.S. Mandhuran. Mr. Mandhuran, if you look at the TNA, you all are very vocal about winning the rights of the Tamil people. You all are very vocal about what is going on in terms of governance. But why are you all not that vocal about corruption, the need to fight corruption in Sri Lanka? Why is that, as a political party?
Well, that has, yeah, you're right, that's not been the thing that's been uppermost in our campaigns. Perhaps due to the fact that that's not the pressing issues that our people face. But whenever this matter has come up in Parliament, we have raised a voice. And at least twice I have spoken in Parliament about this, saying that there seems to be an unwritten memorandum of understanding between the two parties that have governed this country. They change names and shapes and colors, but basically, two parties. The unwritten understanding is that when I am in the opposition, I will shout about corruption, I will say this, that, various things, but won't go beyond a particular point. When I am in government, you shout about corruption, whatever, but that's about it all. I've said that because we can't find any person who's actually been prosecuted and sentenced to prison for corruption, any minister. Right? There have been a few here and there in the 70s, some of them, but nobody went to prison for that. So for a country that is whose one of the biggest problems is corruption, isn't it strange that no one has actually been taken to task? We've raised this a number of times, and we have accused both parties that have ruled this country, taking turns, that this is what they are doing. You scratch my back, I scratch yours, goes on. There's a drama that is enacted in Parliament, and people, what they do then is that they keep changing their vote from one to the other, only to be disappointed that this is no better than the one that was there previously. About the IMF report, well, I was encouraged by the fact that right at the outset the IMF said the biggest challenge confronting an IMF program in Sri Lanka is corruption susceptibilities. And then they said they had this governance diagnostic survey that also corruption is the issue mostly in the governance issue. But what I was disappointed with this report is that it identifies inland revenue and customs and all the rest of it, which is all very good that they have identified all of that, but they have left the political class out of it. They don't say that the ministers, they say at highest levels and so on, but they don't particularize the fact that the system as it obtains has certain percentages for the minister, another percentage for the secretary, another percentage for one below the department head. It's all worked out. It's all neatly worked out. And even if it is a minister who is not corrupt, right, he assumes office, he gets his cut unless he refuses. Otherwise, by default, he gets his cut. Right? So it's part of the system. It's part of the system of governance. So no wonder we've gone bankrupt. But I won't only blame the political class and the public servants. I would say the people are also tolerant of corruption.
No, but don't you think, Mr. Mandhiran, last year people were pushed very much to the ledge and they decided there has to be a change of governance,
yes.
There has to be a system change in Sri Lanka, and the people have played their part. Don't you think
the people played their
responsibility lies with the political parties who are representing parliament?
No, people were pushed to that because changing one from the other, one to the other hasn't worked. So they wanted the whole system change, right? But what I am saying is people have been tolerant for far too long. That's one of the issues. So I'm not blaming the people in that sense.
Because when you said that no one yet has been taken to task relating to corruption, may it be a politician or a parliamentarian or even a minister, that really raises an eyebrow. We know Sri Lanka is a corrupt nation. We know in the corruption index we are in a lower ranking. So there has to be someone who has been taken to task. If you look at countries like Pakistan, they've done it. If you look at countries like Argentina, they've done it. And these countries
every country has done it.
Countries, Malaysia has done it.
That's right.
Maldives has done it. But Sri Lanka, we seem to be oblivious as to what's going on around us.
That's right. So that is a good indicator of the tolerance to corruption.
Right.
The point that I was trying to make with regard to the people is that I think there needs to be a campaign to conscientize the people so that the people will revolt against corrupt leaders and public servants.
Very, very quickly, Mr. Mandhiran, before I open the floor to Niresh and Nadeem to pose questions to you, you on to your far left have Eran Vikramaratne representing the SJB. SJB has already announced Sajid Premadasa is going to be their candidate. Then you have Shreya Laktilaka representing the United Republic Front, who has their leader, Party Champion Rana, who has not yet announced his candidature as far as the presidential election is concerned. But we know Dr. Harini's party, NPP, Anukumar Disanayak, has already announced his candidature.
Who knows, we might also announce our own candidate.
Yeah, very good. If you all do that, I'm very happy, but I don't, yet there are no signs. Given the current status quo, who do you think would best fight corruption as a head of a political party and as a president of the country if hypothetically they are elected?
I'm not going to make any prediction with regard to that because all of them have been ministers in different governments. And so none of them get my vote on that issue.
Not the good. None of them would.
None of them get my vote on that particular issue. All of them have been, all three of those candidates have been ministers.
Yeah, let's leave aside your individual perspective. What about your party's perspective?
Party hasn't discussed this at all.
Okay.
There's a long way to go before we sit down to decide.
Right. So, something to ponder about. Let's wait and see how things would pan out as far as this discussion is concerned, and then probably you can make an informed decision later on, Mr. Mandana. So, on to my immediate right is Nadim, on to my immediate left is Niresh. Niresh, a few days ago when we discussed that we are going to take up this topic, we discussed internally about the World Bank STAR program, and you had a communication with World Bank officials as well on this. So I will give you some time to take this message up from the World Bank. Until such time, let me start off with Nadim.
Certainly, yes. Yeah. Thanks. Dr. Amarasuriya, I'll start with you. I think I've asked this question from you many times, but you mentioned that the JVP maintains good books and that these accounts are missing. And I won't dispute that because I've seen it from the Election Commission itself. Those accounts are very well kept, so kudos to that. But that gives me a dilemma. The fact that the JVP is so transparent with its party finances, but when it comes to the asset and liabilities declarations of the individuals who are in Parliament, it takes a very different stance. You have on your immediate left and on your far right 2 members of Parliament who have unilaterally and voluntarily, regardless of what their party leadership might have had to say about it, made their asset declarations public. The JVP continues to, or the NPP members who are in Parliament, in this Parliament and in the previous Parliament, continue to sort of, whenever this question is posed to them, they say that, oh, it's just a show, there's no point to doing it. But isn't it a demonstration of a commitment to transparency, just like with the party's accounts? So if the party as a whole is able to be transparent and commit to being accountable, why is it that the same standard doesn't apply for individuals within the party who hold public office?
You have asked me this every time I have come on this show and you've been a host.
Exactly.
And I've answered this every time. So let me answer it for the nth time. Yes.
Again, just to make sure that we have it on the record again. To keep it fresh in the public memory.
Go on record. Our position is we've always submitted, because I want to make this very clear, because there is a wrong message that is communicated through this, that we are not submitting our assets as asset declarations as required to Parliament, and that's not true. We
I have no doubt that you are.
Yeah, but in the public view, it's as if we have not done that, and we do that. We do that religiously. Our position has always been that Parliament should make those public, right? And we have always said those need to go public, right? And that we will push for Parliament to make all our asset declarations public, and that's the stance we've taken.
So altogether.
Altogether.
Just that you won't take the first step.
It shouldn't be a choice. It shouldn't be left to some individual or some organization to offer somewhere.
So the positive
website.
now.
But it is a duty and an obligation of the Parliament to make sure that this is
agreed
available.
So now it has been, with the new Anti-Corruption Act, it has now been brought into law that an electronic system is going to be introduced, to which not just MPs, there's a whole list of officials that it mentions, including the President. So I guess that means that the court case that the Presidential Secretariat has filed against it, appealing the RTI Commission's decision, is now void, I'm guessing. So in this current climate, given that the legal background has now changed and the process has changed, will the NPP champion it?
Champion what? We have always championed that level
the implementation of it, because like Mr. Vikramaratne said, the laws are passed, but it's not implemented.
Yeah.
Will the NPP now take up, now that the law has been passed and it's been made compulsory for all MPs, will you now champion the establishment of this electronic system and ensure that push all MPs, all of your colleagues in Parliament, to do it?
No, absolutely, but I don't think it's only about that. right? I mean, it's not just about, and I admire you for your tenacity in holding on to this view, but you know, it is not just about making your asset declarations public. It's also what you do with that asset declaration, right? Already we have enough evidence and enough information within the parliament to actually to actually question some of our elected representatives about the discrepancies within
So
the asset declaration and their lifestyles, for example, right?
So there's
So
a
we-
recent
so we-
example,
yeah.
right?
So
So,
there-
you have
yeah.
a member of parliament who went and paid a massive electricity bill for another member of parliament.
Right.
And now we know that the duty of investigating this is, if you go by law and gazette, it lies with the Asset Declaration Investigation Unit at the Bribery Commission. Don't you think that that unit, given that it hasn't taken much action other than for failure to submit declarations, it's put cases and 2,000 rupee fines, but don't you think that that unit would benefit from some public pressure if this documentation were public?
Najin, who raised that issue first about this unpaid bill?
You did.
We did.
Yeah.
Right? And it was, we were the ones, it was Nalin Hevage who raised this issue. And we have also said publicly that the fact that another MP went and paid the bill is not the end of the issue.
Yeah.
Right? We want to pursue this matter and we will take whatever action necessary.
So how do you just let me leave it at that for the moment and just ask Iran and Mr. Mandran as to what motivated you all to make public your assets as far as assets declaration is concerned. So probably I can give a cue to the NPP as well. What motivated? I'll give you a minute each, the two of you. You can explain as to what motivated you all as Member of Parliament to do so.
Yeah, so it's widely believed, right or wrong, that once you become a member of parliament, you're corrupt, and therefore your assets increase over time as you are a member of parliament. So it's something that's not new. It's done around the world. Lots of transparency in people who hold public office. So we thought, at least a few of us, even if it is not everybody, let's start and just make it public so that others can follow, because everything will not change from the top. You see, we talked about the political class, we talked about them safeguarding themselves. Everything will not change from the top, and therefore I think some things need to start changing from the bottom. I don't think Mr. Sumanthiran has held cabinet position, and I haven't held cabinet position either, though people think that I have, you see. So that's why I meant that some things have to start from the bottom.
Mr. Vandana, what
No, when
motivated you to
I
do
entered
so?
Parliament, you see, I was appointed a national list MP, just like Mr. Vikramaratne in 2010. I read up the law and it said you can't sit or vote in Parliament unless you make the declaration, asset declaration. And the national list MPs were declared one day and the Parliament sat the next day, I think, because there was some delay in holding some election in Kandy district that year. So we had just one day so I hurriedly prepared everything and waited, and just as my gazette declared, ran and did all that, because I thought I won't be able to sit in Parliament on the first day. Then to find that only 17 MPs in that Parliament had actually made declarations.
Submitted it to the office of the Speaker.
Even submitted it. So then, I mean, it really shook me that this was the case, and everyone was. So from that day onwards, I sort of tried to get this moving. I got Iran's, he agreed with me, a few others agreed, but it took a few years before we went out and did it. In fact, what Harini says is right, that the Transparency International putting it on the website was much later. We tried to actually do it in Parliament, have a press conference and just release and I think some JVP colleagues agreed to be with us initially when we did that, but later when we went with Transparency and did it, they had a problem with an organization putting it on the website, and so they didn't join. Anyways, that's another issue. the reason is also what Harini said, it's what they actually declare. You see, the fact that they declare is not the end of the issue. It must be before the people, for the people to be astonished by this declaration and say, what nonsense is this? We know they have this house here, that one here, this one here, and but why should the people do this? The Inland Revenue should have asked questions long ago. I mean, 20-odd-year-old MPs, right? Merely because they are sons of presidents and prime ministers, owning so much of property, they don't do any job of work. The Inland Revenue doesn't ask a single question. 2 years ago, my wife was prosecuted in the magistrates court by the Inland Revenue. Why? Because she was a few days late in submitting her declaration. There was nothing to pay. It was zero. But delay in submitting. She actually went to court and paid a fine of 25,000 rupees for not having to pay anything but delay. I mean, she thought, oh, I don't have to pay any income tax this year, so forgot to submit the declaration. I stayed at home that day out of, how can I go to Halsdorf when my wife is being prosecuted in the magistrates court for
submitting the tax declaration.
A tax case. But can you believe that none of these other guys are even touched?
Yeah, so we have a question from one of our viewers, Sridhar. The question is boiling down to what Mr. Mandhiran spoke about. If you identify the new rich people and dig deep, you will catch the thieves. Why is the Inland Revenue and the Bribery Commission so slow?
Yeah, they are being bribed.
Before going to answer,
they are being bribed. You see, the Inland Revenue, the diagnostic report says that Inland Revenue officials are taking bribes. The commissioners, the CBOC commissioners are corrupt. I can give you instances of their corruption.
But we didn't really need the IMF to tell us that.
Yeah, we knew that before. No, I'm just saying now, they have also said it. Yeah. That's all I'm saying. No, we know that.
Answering to your question, before answering that question, we must be very careful not to make this asset declaration as a rhetorical thing. Now, we know in India, as well as Singapore and Hong Kong, there is a circle of family, right? Now, this is very linear interpretation of asset declaration in Sri Lanka, right? So, we know very well that there is a spouse, there are immediate family relations, but nobody is asking they are the assets. So, easily anybody, I'm not for a moment undermining Iran's and Sumandhiran's effort, but in Sri Lanka, that's why we said that there is a culture of impunity, culture of corruption. So, we have given enough space for any other person to play out around that. So, that is the issue. But we never talks about that. The law is very, very straightforward. So, that's the first thing. Second thing is on now.
So, the Inland Revenue Department has a bigger role to play, as Ms. Mandhiran spoke about.
Said that our Inland Revenue, the customs, everybody corrupt up to the hill. Right? There is no other way to explain that. Now, all ministries are like that. I can give you one good example about now everybody is talking about this scam in medicine. No?
The health crisis.
Health crisis. Now, one company in Sri Lanka who is connected to the opposition politics produced aspirin. But aspirin didn't have the aspirin. Right? Now, according to the guidelines of procurement and other things, the NMRA and the other people, after that, the secretary to the health ministry can blacklist. Now, I have a list of people. So far, you see, there are 13 drugs have been removed from distribution. So, what is the step taken by the health secretary? Nothing. Right? Now, this is the aspirin thing. So far no taken. Now, the procurement guideline says you have to do inspections, you have to do this and that, but so far they have not done, and they come to before the parliament, COP committee or whatever committee, very easily escape from there. Because they don't have a teeth to compel these people to do that, right? So that's why I'm saying that this is a huge governance crisis, huge. The size of this crisis cannot be, measured.
So, Dr. Harini, today, if you look at it in courts, at the Fourth Magistrates Court, the Commission to investigate allegations of bribery and corruption informed the Colombo Fourth Magistrate that further action will not be taken against the 17.85 million rupees in cash found at former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's official residence in official room at the President's house in Colombo.
That proves what I said earlier.
Yes, exactly.
But what's going on? What's happening?
I mean,
let's not look far. Just look at where you found the money.
Yeah.
And now the CBOC has said that nothing.
Lack of evidence.
Lack of evidence.
The evidence is the cash in the bag in the room.
Absolutely, at the president's.
That is the evidence. What was he doing there, right? And if I remember right, the police actually arrested or questioned the people who handed the money over to the police, right? So I mean, I think this is exactly what we are all talking about. This is a huge cover-up.
You have to break this vicious cycle.
Break this vicious cycle.
Otherwise, no escape.
So even with regard to what Mr. Vikramaratne said about independent public prosecutor, I agree with him. You need an independent. But where do you find that independent person is my worry. The Attorney General is supposed to be independent. That whole office is supposed to be independent.
No, but Iran had some concerns in your opening remarks as well, saying the way in which the Attorney General's department
that is right.
themselves.
So therefore you set up another office. But where do you find that independent person? What makes it certain that that person is not amenable to bribes?
So Iran, I'll give you a few minutes to talk about that as well. The role of the Attorney General's department to nab corruption and ensure that those who are responsible are brought before the law.
Yeah, so I think there is no one answer to that, but if I just look at it as the law and what needs to be done in actually tightening it, we have to start somewhere. We can't be negative. We have an issue, we can't be negative. So many steps in it. You start with the AG's department itself. My first point is the conflict of interests, because the advisor to the government, advisor to ministers, ministries and so forth, and then they have to also start prosecuting the people they're advising. If I think of ourselves as an individual, I have a lawyer, right, and he's representing me in everything, and suddenly he has to appear against me. That's a little bit of an issue and a conflict there. That is why I'm always arguing that the prosecutor should be independent. So that's one. The other thing is the delays in law. The delays in law, generally speaking, is unacceptable by any standard, anywhere. You see, I think there was a recent study which showed that it was like 17.5 years if you go through the appeals and the Supreme Court and so forth, and the average was taken. And everybody knows from 2-3 years to 20-30 years, sometimes cases go on, and depending on the case. Then the recent statistic, right, which I picked up from the Ministry of Justice Statistics Unit, showed that in 2019, outstanding cases from the Supreme Court down to the Appeals Court, the High Court, down, all the way to the Children's Magistrate Court, right, there was 763,000 outstanding in 2019. In 2021, it's 1,096,000 cases, an increase of 43%. It's frightening. It's frightening, you see. So delays in law, and I mean, that's not acceptable. I think the people in the legal profession had to put their heads together.
Mr. Vikramaratne, this is not the case only in criminal prosecution, right? We saw like recently in civil cases, like a defamation case, which had been filed by the late actor Gamini Fonseca, was settled only a couple of days ago, and or rather the appeal was settled in favor of People's Bank.
Commercial Bank,
People's Bank was settled in favor of People's Bank a couple of days ago. And Mr. Fonseca
died in 2004.
Right? So this is the kind of, and I know that even when Mr. Sabri was Justice Minister, he said that expanding the capacity of the judiciary, of the courts, was going to be one of his primary priorities. So, has it happened? Of course, there was the economic crisis that happened shortly after he was made Justice Minister, so maybe that put a spanner in the works. But you don't really see any meaningful progress towards it, and you don't really see any, like, from the public point of view, you don't see any what you see from the part of the law officers and the enforcement and others is a lethargy with getting this done.
Yes, so there are things that the government can do, but that alone won't solve this problem. Things that government could do is, I still remember when President Sirisena was in office, he was president, he called me on the phone one day and he said, I want you to come to my office. I said, so what's it about, sir? It's about delays in the law. I have summoned everybody. So I was wondering what it's got to do with me. He said, you're acting Minister of Finance, I need you to sit here while this discussion is going on. So then they came and they said, Aegis department didn't have enough lawyers. Salaries are not good enough to retain people and professionals and, have them, that kind of thing. Bench needs to be increased, right? And then various other things, training, this, that, and
they
the
did
other.
That.
Yeah.
Increase that.
Yeah, training and all that. And then they said, also we need more courthouses and buildings. So I listened, and then after everybody had spoken, I was the outsider there, and the president asked me, what have you got to say? I said, sir, I'll tell you up front. All those things they talked about, increasing the number of lawyers, please ask them to do that. Increasing the salaries, sir, we can do that. We'll make sure in the next budget provisions are there. Training, it can be done, sir. But I also wanted to say one thing, sir. We are a poor country. We have limited resources. We'll put the money in human resources, even for the legal fraternity. But I said, we will not put it in buildings, right? Because we have limited resources. We need to pick up where it should be put. And I said, sir, if I can tell you a small example, I was a small boy. One day my mother said I had to go to school at 1:30 in the afternoon. I turned to my mother and said, why 1:30? Everybody else is going at 7:30 in the morning. And she said, the school doesn't have enough classrooms. I went to a government school. So that whole year I went in the afternoon. That sunk in. And I said, sir, I told the president and the legal fraternity there, the courthouses are used from 9 to 1. Please run a second day from 1 to 6. Let's be practical. Let's solve the problem. Let's not wait. We have limited resources. Let's put it in the right places. So there are things that government can do, but there are things that government can't do. I'll tell you one. I'll conclude with this quickly. Things that government can't do. This is where culture and ethics comes in, right? I go to the court and I get some prominent lawyer like Mr. Sumantiran or somebody, and then the case is being heard, and then suddenly the lawyer says he can't turn up on that day. Then the junior is sent there and the case is being postponed, and this goes on and on and on. I went to a temple in Moratuwa the other day, and the chief priest told me, first time I have gone to court. I went at 9, I was there till 1 o'clock. They took half an hour postponing. They had 30 cases they had called, 27 they postponed, they heard only 3. He's asking me, why did they put the 30 cases on the same day in 4 hours to resolve? And he said it in Sinhalese. That's to keep postponing it. And he said, if they told us to come in 10 years from now, I would have paid 50,000 only one time.
But I will tell you around one thing.
Yeah.
If he retained Mrs. Sumandiran, the price would be much higher.
I didn't want to tell. I didn't want to tell the very humble priest, right, about 50,000 and 1 million rupees and about lawyer's fees. But the point is not the amount of the payment. Mm-hmm. Here what I'm dealing with is, right, the law's delays. Now, why I said it's cultural and ethical, this is not something for government to solve. I think the legal fraternity needs to get together and solve these.
May I say, in relation to, as a practitioner also, now if you look at our court system, the court system is the prominent income earner for the state coffers, right? Unfortunately, while agreeing with what Iran said, 2-session courthouses, all this can possible, but the main problem with the country is that money is properly not utilized, right? It is used at the center. You can easily devolve, right? That money can be used to function several courtrooms in a district. But we are talking about laws delays without understand. Once again, like our system, we never understood our court system. That is the problem. So if you look at, if you question from the treasury, you can every day you can see how much money is collected through the court system to the state coffers.
Yeah, so
That money never goes to the court system.
Yeah, I'm trying to take a lot of questions from our viewers as well, because giving them an equal opportunity to engage in the discussion. So we have a question for Srila. I wish to know if bribery in Sri Lanka is already a criminal offence. If not, why not implement same very vigorously? That is confiscation of all personal assets and long-term jail sentences.
Yeah, under the present law or the new law, for bribery, there is enough laws. That is very sufficient. But the problem is the definition of the corruption. Now, even recently, when the Justice Minister was introducing new law, we said adopt the Singaporean definition, because if you look at the corruption.
Is this the online safety bill? Or?
No. Corruption, anti-corruption. You know, in Sri Lanka, everybody knows 3 guys or 3 persons involved in a corruption. One corruption: the politician, the public official, and the businessman or the private citizen. If you don't bring these 3 together, we are not in a position to file an action. I mean, always 1 or 2 guys will escape.
So, Dr. Harini, so I'm trying to take as much questions as possible, because it's an open discussion where everyone wants to engage. So every one of you are getting questions from our viewers. You may not like it, but I'm going to pose it to you anyway. So, Dr. Harini, regarding your complaints to Bribery Commission, if they don't act, why don't your lawyers file cases before Court of Appeal and move for writs forcing Bribery Commission to take action? We see you all are not taking corruption seriously.
That is
No, I mean, I'm going to leave it to the 2 lawyers to explain whether that's actually possible. As far as I know, we can't do that, right? I mean, I don't know whether you want to come in on that, but as far as I know, I mean, we've gone as far as we can go with the evidence that we have and the fact that we've provided that evidence. I'm sure if there's anything more that we can do, we'll certainly do it, because we're dead serious about this. But I want to say one thing. I mean, we've all agreed that it's the political culture that needs to change. But I think that's what we are struggling with. How do you change that political culture?
Dr. Amarasuri, I can suggest one more step that you can go. I'm not talking about asset declarations anymore, but you mentioned you all had that event. I was actually at that event where you all had the coffee table piled high with all the papers that you all said was, this is all the files that we have. And it had some very nice graphics as well, with an open padlock, etc. At the conclusion of this event, we asked, not just myself, several others, press, anti-corruption activists, etc., asked, why don't you digitize this information and make it public, so that, following the footsteps of WikiLeaks and Julian Assange, make it public so that there is the next step. Because if you can't compel, if as a MP or as a party you can't compel the officers to do their job and enforce the law, you can always take it to the public and exert public pressure to make it. And it was said at that event that it would be done, and it has not been done.
Yeah,
I'm trying to square in my mind this, where it said, we're committed to transparency and anti-corruption, but we want to kind of maybe not involve the public as much.
No,
I'm finding it difficult to square.
I take your point, but I think the fact that we are making it public, also the fact that we are putting all this evidence before the public. I mean, I think Anura Kumara Dissanayake has also said many of these things in Parliament. It's in the hands. It's
Is it a strategic move so that, because he can say it in Parliament and he has the cloak of parliamentary privilege?
He has also said it outside.
No, everything that's in those files.
There's always been cherry picking. Why, Dr. Harini, even at that press conference that was held, that Nadeem was talking about, Attorney Adlo Harshal said, we have more files. We will put it out in due course. I still remember that. Yeah. And then we've seen such statements being made by President Mahinda Rajapaksa. And then we saw such statements being made by Maithripala Sirisena. And now we see similar sentiments being expressed by the NPP as well. So you all are no different from others.
If they give it to us, we'll make it public. We don't have the information.
No, you know, first
Just
of
give it
all,
to us, we'll make
the
it
problem here on corruption.
Similar how?
On corruption,
So in
there are
terms of
several
having
limbs.
files and not putting it out to the
No, I
public.
think many of the files that were on display that day were actually files that were have been handed over to the Bribery Commission as well.
But this is my issue. Giving it to the Bribery Commission is not the
Yes,
same as
I take your point,
making it
Nathan, that we
public,
could.
right?
No, look at Nadeem now. All these things happened before 2015. Lot of NGOs, civil society organization collected information before 2015. Then new government installed FCID form, right? What happened? Now when it come to the dealing with corruption, there are several limbs involved with that. Not only civil society or political party giving a file. First, you need proper investigation. What happened with FCID? Our president has installed, I would say, corrupt officials to FCID. So they made money out of that, right?
When you say our president, Maithripala Sirisena.
Yeah. What I'm saying.
Who you supported?
Yeah. So,
Our president.
otherwise,
my president.
our president in the Yapalana government. So no doubt, no, everybody knows.
You were a presidential advisor at that time.
Yeah, right. So then what happened? FCID made money out of it. Then the investigation. Then the adjudication. The adjudication never worked in our system, right? So the Bribery Commission filed cases without the signature of the commissioners, right? Then next government came and withdrew the application. So if you want to look at this whole issue with a holistic view, unfortunately in Sri Lanka, even the media has no idea about what does corruption means and how to deal with that.
So on that point, Shirad, we at News First, we have been in touch with the Stolen Assets Recovery Initiative of the World Bank and the UN, because we, during last year, the public demanded to know where all the money had gone and what would be done to bring it back. So we were curious about it and we asked them, and they are a global organization which has recovered billions of dollars for the countries.
Yeah,
and
referring to Global Forum of Asset Recovery.
Star. So we were quite shocked when we got this reply, and I will make it short. It said, we have not received a formal request from the government of Sri Lanka for asset recovery related assistance since 2019.
Yeah, why is that?
Why are you
Because we
shocked?
don't have a legal.
So
We also got the same reply.
No, I'll tell you. Why is that? Now, to deal with that or make that application, we need a legal regime which is called Proceeds of Crime Act. It is not enforced within the country. So without that, we can't go and ask for another country to seize a property or transfer that property to Sri Lanka. So our legal framework is unclear. So the Attorney General will come and say to the President,
what is Parliament doing? Because
that's why I said at the beginning, 2018, the Yapalana government established a task force to draft something in relation to Proceeds of Crime Act. Even
The bill was drafted.
Huh?
It was drafted.
In the CBOC has said that they have extensively discussed this aspect. It's a matter of time to bring that asset, the piece of legislation to cabinet.
Mr. Vikramaratne, you were the Deputy Minister of Finance at the time. So you could argue that while you were not in cabinet, there is maybe a degree of responsibility there as well. Now we know that the Proceeds of Crime Act that Mr. Lakthilaka is talking about, that drafting committee consisted of people from the Attorney General's department, like Supreme Court Justice now, but at the time Deputy Solicitor General Yasantha Kodagoda was a key figure in it. There were members from the Bribery Commission, from civil society, including groups like Transparency International, March 12th Movement, etc., etc. Bill was drafted, took inspiration from multiple different similar legislation internationally, including the POCA or Proceeds of Crime Act in the United Kingdom as well. Expert advice was gotten from internationally, and I've seen the bill. I'm not sure if it was gazetted, but it was definitely drafted and then sent to the draftsman's department for seal of approval. It never made its way onto the floor of Parliament. You know, coming close to 2019, long before the coup of late 2018, long before the East attacks, like this was already, like a lot of this work had been done. It just never made its way onto the floor of Parliament. You were in the government at the time, maybe not a senior minister, but as the deputy minister of finance, you had a key role. And as someone who, you know, as Mr. Mandran said, and as you yourself have said, you know, wants to take steps to address these issues. Why did this never materialize?
Yeah, so there's no question about wanting to take steps. In fact, the Declaration of Assets and Liabilities law, right, I had even in this Parliament moved it as a private member's bill. And the new anti-corruption law encompasses a lot of things that have been included in the private member's bill on assets and liabilities, even though I haven't still withdrawn it, because I want to see the new bill being implemented. So that's why it's there. I am unable to comment specifically on the Proceeds of Crime Act because I don't think it came under the Finance Ministry. I think it may have come under Justice Ministry. So I can't really comment on that because it was.
But as a member of the government, were you not privy to it?
No. You need to understand this, right? Government is very complex. Our focus was actually Excise Department, Inland Revenue Department, and Customs. Mangala Samaraveera and I came in, as you know, midway. And one of the things we did deal with was an Inland Revenue Act, right? We brought in an Inland Revenue Act. It takes time to bring in an act. It takes considerable amount of time. It takes about 1.5 years with all the discussions and all, and putting in place. And then the practical side of that was, I was really trying to put it online, right? And then Ramis was brought in and putting on. At every stage, there is some block that comes, and it can be even a technical block or some excuse or something. I came from a banking background, so it was not easy because I called for weekly meetings because I have implemented systems elsewhere in trying to do it. So that was on Inland Revenue. All that was reversed in 2020. Customs, we couldn't even start because we couldn't even start the process of getting the law going on customs. So our attempt was to go for customs as well in actually doing it. Then one of the learnings of this whole thing is, one is law, one is technology, and the other thing is, and if in a future government, which I will be pushing for, is that revenue collection, right? Because 75% to 80% of all government revenue collection comes from these three institutions: Excise, Customs, Inland Revenue, right? We need to go one step further. Like we're talking of independent public prosecutor, we may want to go for a single revenue authority.
Absolutely, so, but customs is so corrupt.
That's right. So you go to customs, you get it cleared on the HS code or whatever, it's approved, but the payments go somewhere else and you go. You reduce because other countries have done this, it's not rocket science, and they have succeeded. And then you also reduce the interaction between public officials and this. So that is on the finance side. On the judicial side, I will leave it to them to answer.
So, Mr. I'll put the question this way.
We're running out of time. I need to give an opportunity to everyone equally because I'm getting a lot of questions as we have just 15 minutes more to go. So we haven't heard about the progress of the following cases for a long time. Example, the court case with regard to the bribe of $2 million accepted from the Airbus industry by a former Sri Lankan airline executive and his wife. What is the status of inquiries about the Pandora Papers, the Panama Papers, lying with the bribery commission?
So you have to ask from them. Now,
so no progress at all.
No progress because on these Panama Papers.
Now you're campaigning
on the Panama Papers. We made a complaint to the bribery commission. So I made that complaint. I know that personally. No, nothing happened thereafter. On the issue of other one where that
Sri Lankan Airlines, they are
Sri Lankan also there was a complaint made to the bribery commission.
But what's happening? People
no, they are sitting on that. Nothing happened. But we have heard through the media that.
But why is it partly Champika Ranawaka is not vocal about all this?
Why not? So we are vocal.
No, we are vocal. Now you are vocal here.
Yeah.
But your
Always
leader is
vocal.
not vocal in parliament.
Now, if you look at the 2015,
It seems like everyone is trying to
No, 2015
have a coalition
also-
to contest the presidential election.
No, there is nothing. Don't drag Champika into presidential elections. So
No,
he has
I'm not saying-
declared. He has not declared that he is going to be a presidential candidate so far. So don't bring that him. What I have to say is, even 2015, Champika Ranawaka brought a cabinet paper to install a new act to deal with that. But unfortunately, Mr. Wickramasinghe didn't accept that paper. He rejected. Instead of that, he brought another thing where we suffered throughout that time, where this Upali Abhiratna Commission always came forward and rapped us, including JVP and everybody, installed a corruption committee under Prime Minister's office or something like that. So we have bungled everything. Every government, not only on, right, on this issue. The problem is even on this stolen asset declaration or whatever, the problem in Sri Lanka is one thing, including media, they don't study in depth on the issue. Now when it comes to stolen asset or anything, now look at the situation with, as Iran correctly said, intelligence gathering. Stolen asset recovery, collection of files won't do anything. You need a very strong collection of intelligence gathering. Whose property? Where is this property of Rajapaksas, if they are talking about, in America or somewhere else? What are the information in relation to that? How you can convert that intelligence into action?
No, but
nothing is happening. There is no system.
We know that big house in Makola that was there. Malvan.
So that is under the
but there was
adjudication.
No owners. But there was no owners.
So that is Attorney General Department.
Who has built it? Who has acquired the land? No one.
Ghost.
Ghost houses.
This is one thing that I'd like to actually ask you. You mentioned that for your party, anti-corruption efforts are not really a priority because there are
people struggling with other things.
Larger issues for your constituents that you need to represent. Do you feel that? It sounds like a strange question to ask, but do you feel that if the TNA were to take on more of these issues, as I know that because this is, as a former chairperson also of the Oversight Committee on Finance, you have spoken extensively about this in Parliament, but if the TNA were to take on more of these issues, do you think that it would lead to broader acceptance of the party and the other issues that you're also speaking of amongst the broader Sri Lankan public?
Yeah, possibly true. But I want to make one thing clear about this corruption, fight against corruption. I don't think we can fix the system by bringing this law, the other law, and making these small adjustments here and there, and expect the big change that we want. Last year gave us a little hope that the youth of this country wanted an overhaul of the whole governance system. Unfortunately, that was hijacked by Ranil Wickramasinghe, and then everything brought to a standstill. I think there has to be a total overhaul.
So you're talking about an election?
Yes, the election should have happened last year at the end of the people's protest movement, when people were conscious about all of these issues. But I think that spirit of Aragalaya is still there, and there has to be, we have to go to the people. But one more thing is that, as you rightly say, we also have to take this issue of corruption as one of the most important issues to the people, talk about it, and tell them not to elect people they know to be corrupt. They also keep electing and re-electing people they jolly well know are corrupt, and they cast votes for people who bribe them. They sell their votes also. This happens, right? So that culture also needs to be combated. So I say either election or even without election, if we can have an overhaul, like we did with Gotabaya Rajapaksa, chase them out. That has to happen. Without that, there is not going to be a proper dealing with corruption.
Yeah. So I said earlier on, some questions you may not like, some questions you may be disgruntled with it. But again, Mr. Mandan, this question is for you from one of our viewers. She's quoting a tweet that was released 4 hours ago on this subject. It says, out of the 288 days the current parliament has sat so far, R. Sambandhan was only present for 39 days, that is 13.6%. The total payments made to him for this window is rupees 4 million for fuel, telephone, office, transport at rupees 419,000 per month. This is taxpayers' money. Corruption of another kind, isn't it?
Well, this has concerned us and particularly me from the time that he became unable to actually attend parliament regularly. I mean, I'll say it publicly, since the question also has been posed. Some of us in the party about a year ago went and spoke to him and asked him to step down. He has refused to do that on the basis that at 2020 elections, he said when the people elected him as first in the list in the district, they knew his health condition very well and they still elected him. And so he still remains.
So I don't agree with... There's rifts between inside the party?
No, there are no rifts. We asked him whether isn't it right that he steps down because of his ill health and inability to serve his constituency particularly. But I must say that even when he was put up as a candidate for Trincomalee district, we didn't expect him to serve that district in particular, but a larger sort of Tamil concerns as it were, and which he in some ways is able to do, unable to do now a lot of it. My personal view is that he should have stepped down. We'll do something about that soon.
Right.
One last question. Last question.
Right. Okay. Very quick. I just have
Dr. Amarasuriya, Mrs. Sumandiran was talking about this buying votes that people are they're allowing themselves to be bribed into voting. There's a new campaign finance limitation on campaign finance law that has been put forward, and if I'm not mistaken, it limits it at about, as a candidate, you can't spend more than 20 rupees per vote you get or something like that. Do you think that this will be that in its, the proof is in the in the eating? Do you think that this will be implemented and that it will be implemented fairly, or do you think that what many candidates for future elections have probably amassed already massive campaign war chests? Do you think that every single cent is going to be spent?
Every single cent that has been
already been amassed will be spent regardless of what the campaign finance legislation
I think we predicted this, and we say it again, that the next election will be probably one of the elections where there's the highest amount of spending. There's no doubt about it. But so, I mean, again, it is not the lack of laws that in our country that's a problem with the corruption. It's the implementation. And I want to take this discussion away from the technicalities of it, right? Mr. Sumandiran talked about the need for consciousness raising among the public. And I think that's something we have been doing for many years. I think the whole sort of Aragalaya spirit that came out against corruption a lot of it came based on the information that we had released to the public, right? And also linking the crisis, the economic crisis, very clearly to corruption and the wastage that is going on in government. I think that's a link that has been now established and is a huge part of the reaction against this current regime, because that is now firmly in people's mind. People are and I think that's where I would argue that even TNA has a much bigger role in this, because this economic crisis affects that constituency as well, and one of the biggest causes of
there are more members in parliament than the MPP.
Than us, for sure. But also because the economic crisis is directly linked to this corruption, and I think people recognize that and understand that, and it is a concern for them as well.
Right. So,
so this issue. People have changed. People acknowledge this, and I think it's just our rulers our political class which is not willing to accept that this has changed.
So I want to wrap up the show because we have only time 4 to 5 more minutes to go. So I'm going to give you a minute each to wrap up as to what is the way forward for Sri Lanka. So let me start off with Sridhar first.
Now, if you look at the present society, to me, the present society is suffering with political anxiety, right? Anxiety is like everybody has cheated us. The political class is not honest, irrespective of left or right, right? Political class is not honest, they are not open, they are not efficient, they are not transparent. So, as a result, I have to tell you that presently that is another danger where the people think we should support my learned friend like NPP's party, where they also don't have a vision, to me, according to myself. So it is the responsibility of the center-right parties of this country to organize. I mean, the left has their own vision. There is no argument on that. But the more profoundly, right now, the right has no answer to those criticisms. That is the problem. As a result, the NPP and JVP is going along what do you call a monorail race.
With no opposition.
No opposition. So we have to organize it because if the right or the center right has a vision, they must organize themselves to face this.
Right.
Otherwise, Sri Lanka has no future.
Thank you very much, Shriral Lakhtaka. I now move to Dr. Harini.
Well, I mean, I think Shiral said it, right? The center-right has no answer because the center-right political platform cannot function in a corruption-free society. I think that's the bottom line, right? So, I mean, I think for this to change, it's no use talking about officials and state officials and prosecuting them. You need to catch the big fish and you need to prosecute them. And that's not going to happen under this regime, or as we saw even under the previous regime, which people brought into power with so much hope, with that on that mandate, right? So we need a fresh mandate. We need to elect a government that has made corruption corruption-free government, anti-corruption, a central part of that platform, and I think that's why the NPP is appealing at this point, because it's speaking to a critical key concern.
Thank you very much.
Thanks
a lot, Dr.
right
Harini. Ms. Mandira.
Yeah, two things. One, what we have not spoken about at all at this show, you see, this whole corruption thing, over the last 3 decades or 4 decades, it developed so much also due to the fact that there was a war. And there was secrecy behind that war. And secrecy behind procurements, large arms procurement and all of that kind of thing. It was an unnecessary war. It was a political issue. Ought to have been resolved politically. That wasn't done. It has not been done even now. So without addressing that, I don't think we can go forward. So corruption is also linked to that. My second point is linked to that again, is that for a complete overhaul that I spoke about earlier, we need a radical alternative. So what I mean by that is, if there is a presidential election or something like that that comes about, get together and field a radical alternative candidate. Don't look for a Sinhalese, a Buddhist, right? Somebody from a mainline political party or anything like that.
Right.
Look for a person who will address these crucial issues. Right? Irrespective of race, color, language, whatever. An honest, corrupt-free person.
Thank you very much.
A common candidate.
Yep.
I now move to Iran.
Yeah, so our party basically is a social democracy. We believe in a social market economy. We believe in the private sector creating wealth, but we believe it needs to be distributed so that the low income and the vulnerable actually protected. I think the first principle in fighting anything is people. Most people put policies ahead of people. We put people. You need to have the correct representatives. Then the first qualification on that is ethical people. You need ethical people. You need to basically nominate them, and people need to be voting for them. The second qualification only becomes experience and education. Ethics first, experience and education. Sometimes we think that if we have education, we have degrees, we can do it. That's not good enough. You need to have experience. You have lots of people in parliament who have been politicians all their lives. They're very good at making speeches and saying the right thing. They have never ever worked. They have never got on a bus or on a train or in a van, gone to a workplace, actually had a boss, had goals, had KPIs to fulfill, somebody to give you a knock on your head, correct you, give you a promotion or demote you or give you a bonus or not give you a bonus. They haven't got that experience. So they can't then really convert policies into practice. So policies have to be converted into practice. That is why I say, I don't believe in this theory that you put one person and it will change. We've had 40 years of that. We need a good leader, no question about that, and it's all relative. Choose the best leader. But also you need a good team, and therefore I would say, look at the team which you think relatively, ethically better, experienced, and who also has the education to actually deliver.
Right, thank you very much, Eran Wickramaratne, for your thoughts as well. Thank you very much, Ashwira Laktilaka, Attorney at Law, Senior Vice President of the United Republic Front, Dr. Harini Amarasuriya, Member of Parliament of the NPP, Mr. M.S. Mandran, President's Council, Member of Parliament from the TNA. Thank you very much, Nadeem. Thank you very much, Nivesh, for your thoughts. The point that I gathered from your final remarks was that Iran relatively better. So not every team is good in Parliament, is it?
It's relative always.
Relative always. I leave you tonight with a quote, as I always do. Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. Take care and good night.